everyone, it's Mrs. C. I hope that you guys had a great weekend. Okay, so today's lesson we're going to talk about solving multi-step equations. So last week we talked about solving single-step equations. So with the single-step equations, what we were doing was we were collecting the like terms and we were always asking ourselves what was happening between the letter or our variable and what's happening with the number. And in terms of what's happening, we're asking what operation are we using? And we always said that to undo that operation, you have to do the opposite. So if we were doing x plus 3, to undo that adding 3, we'd have to subtract 3 from both sides. Today, we're going to talk about multi-step equations, and the rules are exactly the same, but what's different here, you'll notice, is that all of my terms, all of my letters, my variables, aren't on one side of the equation. So if I'm looking here, I have x's on the right hand or the left hand side as well as the right hand side. So in order to do this, the first step that we're going to do, and again, this blank note is on Google Classroom. You do not need to print it out. You can totally copy it down. It's designed to be copied out into your notebook. Okay, so here's what is going to happen. So to solve an equation involving several terms, we are going to collect like terms. Sorry, I was using white ink. Very awesome. Like terms on one side of the equation and numbered terms on the other side. So here, remember when I'm talking about that idea of like terms, this means same variable, same exponent. Okay, so they have to have that same letter, same exponent. If they don't have that, then they're not like terms. And what I mean by numbered terms here, I'm talking about any term that doesn't have a letter. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about here. So let's look at this first one. So we're going to solve these equations by collecting my like terms first. I have designed some simple steps here. I take it a little bit further than what other teachers might do just to help you out. The first step here, and I'm going to write out the steps on the screen so that you can copy them into your note. The first step that I'm going to tell you to do is look at the equation and pick the side with the most amount of letters. And what I mean by most amount of letters is the side that has the greatest number beside the letter. So here, if I look at the left-hand side, I have 3x. If I look at the right-hand side, I have 2x. And I know that 3 is bigger than 2. So my left-hand side has more x's, okay? My goal now, my step number 2, is to move all my letters to that side. Okay, and I'm going to do that by doing my opposite operation. So here if I have positive 2x or plus 2x, in order to undo adding, I'm going to subtract them. And this works exactly the same way as solving my simple equation. So if you're confused with what's going on, go back and watch that video first. I'm going to start by rewriting the left side exactly as I see it. I'm going to leave some space here before I write my equal sign. I'm going to write my 2x, and we just said that I'm going to subtract my 2x here because I want to undo it, minus 4 because that's what's written, okay? Now, because I did this subtract 2x here on this side, I now have to do that on the left-hand side, so that's why I wrote that in there. 2x minus 2x, that's going to just leave me with no x's on this side. So on my right-hand side, I'm just going to be left with negative 4 or subtract 4, and again, that's the same thing. Just going to rewrite that real quick. I'm going to gather my like terms on my left-hand side. So my step here is gather like terms. And I can do that by writing my x's beside each other. Or I can just kind of ignore this plus 2 for 2 shakes. And I'm just going to look and I see that this is 3x minus 2x. And 3 minus 2, well, that just leaves me with 1x or x. Okay, so these have all been taken care of, and I'm left with plus 2 on this side of the equation. So far I have 1x plus 2 equals negative 4. My last step here well, second last step is I'm going to move my numbered terms to the other side of the equation so that they're all together. Okay, so if I have plus 2 on this side, I undo adding by subtracting. So I have 1x plus 2. I want to undo it, so I'm going to subtract that 2 equals. On my right-hand side, I have that -4. And I just subtracted 2 from this side of the equation, so now I have to do the same thing on the other side of the equation. Positive 2 minus 2, that leaves me with 0, so I'm just left with x on this side, or 1x on this side of the equation. And -4 subtract 2, that's now going to be -6. So I found out here that my x, in order for this equation to work, in order for this equal sign to be true, that means that x has to equal -6. Okay? And my last step here, which we did and I kind of jumped ahead, was solve for x, or your variable. Okay. So let's move on to the next example. We're going to follow the same steps that we had here. Okay? So here I have 7 minus 2k equals 8 minus 5k. I'm going to start by doing the exact same thing. Okay? I'm going to pick the side that has the largest amount of letters. So in this case it was k's. So here I have -2. Here I have -5. -2 is still bigger than -5. Okay, so I'm going to move all of these k's over to this side. I'm going to start just by rewriting my 7 minus 2k, leave some space, and I'm going to rewrite the right-hand side of the equation. I undo -5 or subtract 5 by adding it. So I'm going to do plus 5k here. If I added 5k to this equation, I have to add it to the other side. Okay? So here, -5k plus 5k, that's just going to equal 0. So I'm only left with 8 on this side of the equation. I'm going to rewrite my 7 on this side of the equation, but now I can gather my like terms. So if I have -2 and I add 5 to it, that's going to leave me with +3. The k comes along for the ride. So now I'm left with 7 plus 3k equals 8. My next step is I want to move my numbered terms over to the opposite side of the equation. So I want to move this 7 over here with the 8. Now my 7 doesn't have a sign in front of it. So what that means is that it's positive. So if I'm having a positive here, in order to get rid of it, I have to subtract it. So I have 7. I need to subtract 7 to get rid of it. I'm going to rewrite my 3k equals 8. And if I subtracted 7 from the left-hand side of the equation, I have to subtract 7 from the right-hand side. 7 minus 7 is 0, so that leaves me with 3k. 8 minus 7 is 1. Now I have to ask myself, because this is an extra step, I'm trying to get k by itself, so I'm solving for k. What's happening between this 3 and this k? Well, I'm multiplying. What's the opposite of multiplying? I'm going to divide. So I divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3, that just leaves me with k. 1 divided by 3, you can just leave that as a fraction. So in order for this equation to work, in order for 7 minus 2k to actually be equal to 8 minus 5k, k has to be 1 over 3. Or if you used a calculator, 0.333 repeated. Okay. Example C. And again, remember, you can pause, go backwards, do exactly as you need to do in order to get through these. And we're going to do example 2 for tomorrow. So this is today's lesson right here. So I have 5 minus 3m equals -2 minus 2m. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I want to move all of my letters over to the side that has the most amount. So on my left-hand side, I have -3. On my right-hand side, I have -2. -2 is actually bigger than -3. So it's better to have less negative numbers, right? If this was my bank account, it's better to have -$2 instead of -$3. So I'm actually going to move my -3m over to my right-hand side of the equation. So to do that, to get rid of a negative, and again, I just rewrite my 5, to get rid of my -3m, I'm going to end up adding it. Okay? If I add -3m to the left-hand side, I have to add 3m to the right-hand side. If I look at my left-hand side, -3m plus 3m is 0, so that just leaves me with 5. If I look at my right-hand side, -2m plus 3m is the same as saying 1. So I'm just going to rewrite my -2 here. And again, -2m plus 3 or -2 plus 3, that leaves me with 1m. Okay. So now I want to move my numbers, anything that doesn't have a letter attached to it, to the other side of the equation. So what that means here is I'm going to move this -2 over to the other side. And I'm going to do that. I'm just going to leave space here by adding it. To get rid of negatives, I add them. If I added 2 on one side of the equation, I have to add 2 to the other side of the equation. So 7, which is 5 plus 2, equals -2 plus 2 is 0, and that just leaves me with my m. Okay? Now, here is something a little bit different than what we're seeing, because usually the letters were on the left-hand side of the equation. It's completely okay for them to be on the right-hand side, because we can say 7 equals m, or we can say m equals 7. That means the exact same thing, right? Just like if I were to look at this, and let's do an example where I'm not using any letters, okay? Something as simple as 5 times 2. We know 5 times 2 equals 10, right? You can also say 10 equals 5 times 2. That's okay. So here, it doesn't matter what side of the equation our letters are on. The reason why I'm telling you to move the letter over to the side that has the most amount of them is because then you avoid this ugly situation where you're dealing with negative letters. Okay, we don't ever want negative letters. We want positive letters. So this is how we kind of get it. All right, so this is how we solve multiple step equations. There's going to be another quick lesson tomorrow. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I've attached a worksheet. So the worksheet has a lot of problems on them, but you're going to do some today, some tomorrow. And I will post on Google Classroom which questions you're going to do today. All right, I hope that you guys, again, all had a great Easter weekend, and I can't wait to check in with you. Shoot me an email. Let me know how you guys are doing. Have a good one.